Good evening, everybody, and it's time for Theology Friday. I am Derek Day, and I'm riding solo tonight. Now, I'm doing something a little bit different, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. Just for the record, before we get too far down the road, tonight is just going to be simple bullet bourbon over ice on the rocks, you know, and then we're going to go ahead and get into it. Um, First of all, I want to say that I had my annual physical today. And in my annual physical, I was 50.5 pounds lighter than last year's physical. That is cause for celebration in and of itself. For many of you already know that I've been working on this fitness and wellness journey because number one, I want to lose weight. I want to look good in my clothes. I want to um, feel more confident. I want to be healthier and I want to live longer. And so these are all of the things that are important to me. Now, let me do something real quick. I need to check and make sure that we are still live here. I just want to check this out. Yep, and it looks like we are live. So that being said, back to the subject at hand. So Aaron is out. He said that he'll be back next Friday, and my beautiful wife graciously hosted with me last week. This week, I put the link to the show in the comments or in the headline for the show, because if you want to join in, you may feel free to do so by clicking the link. And if you click the link, it'll throw you into the green room here. And I'm just going to grab this link one more time. And I'm going to go over to Facebook and I'm going to drop it in the comments in case you want to join. So I'm going to say join in. Boom. And there's that. Okay, and let's go and do this in YouTube as well. I can't. I'm not going to mess with YouTube, but anyhow, here you go. So I thought about what I want to talk about today, and first of all, let me say a couple of things. Couple of shout outs. One to my wife for standing in last week. She did a fantastic job, and we talked about some things we are likely going to do something together in the future. So stay tuned for that. It'll be absolutely awesome. The second thing is that Aaron and I are revamping this show. It will no longer be called Theology Friday. It will be called the Gnostic Agnostic. And we have some really interesting subject matter and some surprises for you. Because we've been doing theology for 5 years now. It's been very successful. A lot of people have joined. A lot of people have given us testimony of how the subject matter of theology has changed their lives. And so I'm grateful for everyone who tuned in. And I'm sure I speak for Aaron in the same regard, that we're grateful for all of you for supporting us for this long. And there's still some things that are coming out of theology. We wrote a book. We've got to get it edited and we got to get it published. And so that book will be called Growing in Real Time. We're really excited about that. And so while I'm here, I'm going to do a couple of shameless plugs here. One is that if you, I should have turned this around. Let me see if I can do this under video. And say, turn off the mirror. Okay, now you can see meta speech. In case you're into public speaking or want to get better at public speaking, meta speech will help you because it will help you decode the DNA of speaking publicly and also help you deconstruct the DNA of your own speaking style and help you find your voice and help you become a better speaker. The second book that I want to share with you is The Martial Leader. The Martial Leader is a book about leadership through the lens of Wing Chun and Jeet Kune Do. And the reason why I picked those two martial arts is because out of all the martial arts that I've studied, out of all the martial arts that I've become proficient at, Wing Chun and Jeet Kune Do have been my go-tos. They have been the ones that have really forced me to get better. So this book, if you want to understand leadership through the lens of martial arts, this book is for you. And if you're a leader and you don't really give a shit about martial arts, it can still be for you because it'll help unpack some ideas about leadership that maybe you haven't seen or considered yet. But last and not least, and this is going to lead me into my subject tonight, Deconstructing Religion 2. All of these books are on sale on Amazon. And let me tell you something about Deconstructing Religion 2, that if you buy this book and you agree to write a review for me, I will refund 50% of the purchase price of the book to you. I'm not going to give them away, but I'm going to help you out because I want to get reviews. I want to get traction. This book is the last book on deconstruction that anybody will need, because understand this. I know I've gotten into some trouble with some friends about this, but I am totally opposed to the deconstruction industry. In other words, that people are on this perpetual cycle of deconstruction. You start deconstructing, and I'm going to tell you, everybody of any faith, any Christian, Muslim, Jew, Hindu, whatever, you owe it to yourself to deconstruct your faith, right? You need to strip away all the superfluity and find out what really makes it tick. And if you've reached the end of the road, you will make a decision, a hard decision, that either I am going to deepen my faith because now I've stripped it of all of its bullshit, or I'm going to go away and go do something else. And that something else could be mysticism, it could be stoicism, it could be humanism, it could be atheism. And more to the point, one of the key points, one of the key tenets of this book is that if you haven't actually flirted with atheism at some point in your deconstruction, you really haven't deconstructed enough. And this book will get you there. This book will take you face to face with atheism. And let me say this, because I was there. I'm no longer an atheist. I consider myself an agnostic anti-theist. I don't have any use for theology. And that, my friends, is the segue into tonight's subject, because I want to talk about pushing the envelope, and why this is so important. Because one of the things that I think is really important is that we get better, right? I've heard people say that the golden age of the automobile was like from 1957 to like 1969, because then you had these big block, leaded gas swilling behemoths with tons of horsepower and torque, and everybody thinks that that was the golden era of the automobile. But I'm here to tell you that it wasn't. It isn't. Because in this era, you can buy a Honda Civic that will outrun pretty much any muscle car from the 60s. It'll absolutely, even the Italian exotics, the British, whatever. This is the golden age of the automobile. And now you have cars like the Tesla Plaid, the Tesla Model S Plaid, and the Lucid Air Sapphire. These cars go 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds. Now, let me put this in perspective, because in measuring 0 to 60, anything under 3 seconds is shocking to the human body. Anything under 3 seconds, this creates a rush of adrenaline in your body. When you start talking about sub 2 seconds, you're talking about cars that are faster than the fastest motorcycles. You're talking about cars that accelerate harder than a lot of amusement park roller coasters. I mean, this is a big, big deal. So cars are getting better. Airplanes, once upon a time, the FAA would not certify an airplane to fly transatlantic or trans-Pacific routes without 4 engines. Why? Because that redundancy was needed, but that redundancy came at a cost. It came at the cost of fuel. You had to have more fuel to power those engines to pay for that redundancy. Now you have twin engine planes that can fly, I don't know, like 17,000 miles at a shot. I think the Dreamliner from Boeing, that it does that, and the A340 twin, that it'll do that. So planes have gotten better, motorcycles have gotten better, trains have gotten better, medicine has gotten better, biology has gotten better, chemistry has gotten better, physics has gotten better. Every intellectual discipline that you can think of has markedly improved. Now let's draw a line in the sand, because we have to have a starting point. The starting point is key here. This is really, really important. And so I'm going to set the Wayback Machine to the 1st century. And if you were to take a chemist from the 1st century and bring them into 2025 and give them nothing but the books, you're not giving them any lab equipment, you're not giving them any exposure to any actual experiments, just the books, just the books. That 1st century chemist would wonder why we haven't unlocked alchemy yet. Because he would say that you have tapped into something akin to witchcraft. If you took a biologist from the 1st century and brought them into 2025 and just give them the books, not give them any specimens or anything to study, no vivisections or anything like that, just the books, they would say that you have unlocked the secret of God. If you took an engineer from the 1st century and brought them into 2025, and again, you don't let them see any bridges, don't let them see the Burj Khalifa, don't let them see any of the dams or any of the huge public works projects that people have done. Don't let them see any of that shit. Just give them the books. And they would say, you have unlocked wizardry. And the same thing with physics. Oh my God, physics is really, even if you took Isaac Newton, Sir Isaac Newton, the father of modern macro physics, and you gave him just the books, he would say that man has become God. When he looks at quantum physics, quantum mechanics, particle physics, and things like that, and he would look at all of that and he would just say, this is amazing. Psychology, medicine. You take a doctor from the 1st century, bring them into 2025, and just give them the books. Don't give them any surgical equipment. Don't allow them into a surgical theater. Just give them the books. And they too would say that you've unlocked the power of God. Heck, even linguistics has gotten better. How we communicate, how we parse words and construct sentences, and how we translate languages, all of that has gotten better. Everything has gotten better, except theology. Now, out of all the intellectual disciplines, theology is the one that has not moved the needle. Not one iota, not one bit. If you took a theologian from the 1st century and brought him into 2025 and don't let him attend any churches, don't let him attend any seminaries, just give him the fucking books, and they would say, well done, good and faithful servant. In other words, you held it down. You haven't changed. And this is, to me, this is amazing, because what I've been saying here, I'm going to slide my little side table over here a little bit closer so I can have my drink at my hand and not fuck with this table too much. That the funny thing is theology is the only branch of intellectual study that has not moved. Now, imagine this, right? Imagine if communication stayed the same as theology. We wouldn't have our smartphones. We wouldn't have computers. We wouldn't have the internet. We wouldn't have any of these things. I mean, quantum computing, fuck that, man. That ain't even happening. Because the reality is theology has been stuck. And I'm going to tell you why in a minute, because I have a hypothesis on this. And you got to understand why I parse between hypothesis and theory, because most of what we think is mere hypothesis. It's an educated guess. And for many of y'all, and y'all know who you are, it ain't even educated. But a hypothesis is an educated guess. In other words, you know something about the subject, and now you put some thought behind it, and you submit this hypothesis for peer review and all of that. So that's the thing. Baby, I see your comment. And I'm going to get to that too. This is the challenge, right? Everything gets better. I think about when I was in grade school and we had chalkboards, and basically you use chalk on a slate board to communicate in writing to the remainder of the class. Now we have whiteboards, and now you have digital whiteboards where you can do something on a digital whiteboard and it gets transliterated into a computer and it can go out on the internet and spread everywhere. That's advancing the state of the art. For example, cars going from carburetors to fuel injection, from going from drum brakes to disc brakes. Man, I even think about this, and I use this as an analogy on a previous show. We were talking about the advancement of the state of the art, and I always think about this like that in Formula One, back in the 90s. So this is as recent as the 90s. There was this one guy, Michael Schumacher, a German driver, who seemed like he was invincible. It was like he had everything that Ayrton Senna, Alain Prost, Juan Manuel Fangio, and all these others all rolled into one, because this guy had a trick up his sleeve that nobody can match. He changed gears on average. It was almost 100 milliseconds faster than the next driver. Now, Formula One is a event or a competitive series that's measured in thousandths of inches, or thousands of seconds rather, thousands of inches too. But anyway, I digress. Schumacher was able to outshift everyone. There was nobody that could compete, and it seemed like this guy was going to be totally invincible, until Ferrari came up with something. They came up with something they called the F1 transmission system. And what they did is they put a single clutch into a manual transmission, and they controlled the shifts by driver actuated paddles behind the steering wheel. And the theory was that these things could outshift Schumacher, and it would give Ferrari a competitive advantage that it was losing. And they were right up to a point. The problem is that the F1 system was not exactly reliable. It could outshift Schumacher, sure, but it was fragile. But then the designers developed systems with two clutches. So basically, with the second clutch, you're able to preload a gear based on some computer telemetry that would tell you what gear you were expecting, and the computer would react to your shift in the paddle and put that gear in place. And now, not only couldn't a driver like Schumacher compete with that, but no other transmission could compete with that. Nothing. It was like totally ineffable. But guess what? It got better. It got better and better and better, to the point where now you could get a dual clutch paddle shifted transmission in something as innocuous as a Volkswagen Golf. This is what happens when the envelope gets pushed. This is what happens when the state of the art is advanced. This is what happens. For example, how many of you guys still have incandescent bulbs in your house or fluorescent bulbs? Everybody's got LEDs now. Why? LEDs last longer. They're brighter. They don't burn as hot. They're more efficient, more cost effective. And now, because of economies of scale, they've actually gotten just to be pretty much as cheap as the incandescent bulb was. The state of the art, pushing the envelope, makes things better. Now, watch this. This is where it gets interesting, because every time religion has attempted to push the state of the art, what happens? That individual gets branded as a heretic. When you think of all the way back to Marcion, and you go to some of the more modern people, like Catherine Coleman, or Miles Monroe. I mean, people that they were seeing things beyond the horizon. They saw things that other people didn't see. They had revelations of things that no one else saw. These people get branded as heretics. But when you are in a scientific discipline, if you're in a scholarly discipline, if you're in a scientific discipline, that what happens, these disciplines get better. Over time, they get better. And religion, theology specifically as a intellectual discipline, is the one that has been left behind. If you go to seminary today, they're teaching the same shit that they taught 1,000 years ago. And here's the thing, is that if this pattern, if this model were so good, if it were so successful, then we would see change in the world. Instead, what you will see are four churches on the same four corners of an intersection, vying for the attention of everybody that crosses that path. And none of them offer anything significantly different than the rest. And this is why Aaron and I are going to do the Gnostic agnostic, because we are interested in pushing the envelope and advancing the state of the art. And the thing is that a lot of what was on the cutting room floor in canonization, that is how the Bible was assembled, was left out. And it was left out. And here's the thing, we only know what was left out from what we've discovered by accident. Things like the Nag Hammadi scrolls, and some of the texts from Ethiopia, and the Dead Sea Scrolls. You know, from these things, we find that there was a significant amount of knowledge, wisdom, information that was left on the cutting room floor. Now, that in and of itself is bad, because what the only reason why you would leave anything out, and I love how theologians, they're really entrenched, and they'll say the reason why it was left out is because it didn't harmonize with what Jesus taught in the Gospels, or how things linearly matched up from the Old Testament to the New. Guys, listen, things don't match up linearly from the Old Testament to the New Testament, and that was where Marcion got in trouble, because Marcion was all about shit canning the Old Testament. Now, when I was a Christian preacher, I was pretty much on board with Marcion. I don't see any reason why, if we are ostensibly under a new covenant, why anything from the old covenant would even matter. That could be left behind. See what I did there? So the Gnostic Gospels run afoul. I was going to say run contrary, but I'm going to say afoul, because I want to really dig into this. You know, instead of pushing the envelope, we could call this episode "Poking the Bear," but I digress. The thing is that the Gnostic books never talked about going to heaven or eternal conscious torment. It never talked about a pie in the sky and the sweet by and by, and the great big sky wizard who's going to observe all of our foibles and maybe fulfill our needs. Yeah. The Gnostic books don't talk about any of that shit. They talk about turning within. One of my favorite quotes from the Gospel of Thomas is that if you find what is within you and use that, it will save you. If you know what is within you and you fail to use it, it will destroy you. I know I'm paraphrasing that a bit. That's not the exact quote, but you get the drift. In other words, that the kingdom of God, which is not really the kingdom of God, let's call it the kingdom of humanity. Let's call it the kingdom of consciousness. I think that's a better word. The kingdom of consciousness dwells within each and every one of us. And not only does it dwell within each and every one of us, it dwells between us. And forgive me if I get this wrong, but there's like a network of fungi that basically exists under all of the earth, all of the landmass, mycelium. And y'all correct me if I'm wrong. I may be wrong about that word because I didn't look it up. It just kind of popped in my head. But people call that, scientists call that the internet of plants. This is how plants communicate with one another. It's how oak trees understand that they are oak trees, how mushrooms understand that they're mushrooms. And basically, they're part of this broader collective. There's this global intelligence that surrounds and connects each and every one of us. And this is what the Gnostics were teaching. The problem with Gnosticism is Gnosticism does not lend itself to congregationalism. See, and congregationalism is important to religion because when you can get people in one spot on one page, it's possible to spawn groupthink. And once you spawn groupthink, now you're able to exercise control. See, the Gnostic flavor of Christianity, and I don't even want to call it that because it's not about Christ. Let me say something. Let me finish my thought first. Okay. So if we dispense with congregations, then it becomes how do we first interact with ourselves, and then how do we interact with each other based on what we know about ourselves? In other words, you have to be true to yourself first. You cannot be honest in the broader contextual sense or in a narrower contextual sense, like intellectual honesty. You cannot have any one of those without self-knowledge. Because if you don't have self-knowledge, you really don't understand what truth is. And if you don't understand what truth is, it is impossible for you to be honest. And this is the thing, what religion does, and it's supported, it's undergirded by theology, is it teaches us not to look within. It tells you that the heart is wicked in all ways, that the tongue is a flame of fire, that no good thought exists in your mind. It tells you all of these things because why? It wants you to be self-deprecating, because once you're self-deprecating, you're easily controlled. Let me give y'all the game for free. I'm from Detroit, and I'm going to tell you something. This is Pimp 101. This is Pimp 101. Because how does a pimp turn someone into a whore? By breaking them down mentally. That it's a purely psychological game. And it's not coincidental that the religious clergy arrayed themselves in glorious robes and clothes, and why pimps like fur coats and hats. I'm gonna let y'all marinate on that one for a minute. But again, what does theology contribute to humanity? And that's probably the big question. That might be the crux of this discussion. What does theology contribute to humanity because linguistics yields better communication. Medicine yields better treatment. And I know how some of y'all love to hate on big pharma, but pharmacology creates better drugs. Mechanical engineering produces better cars, better airplanes, better ships, better trains, better bicycles. Philosophy helps us to understand our place in the world. And it gets better. They're constantly unpacking things about philosophy. Physics. Do you know that we are on the verge of not only quantum computing? Quantum computing already exists, but now we're talking about quantum communication. We're using the concept of entanglement that we can split a particle, or we could take two particles that have shared the same energy field and send them far distances apart, and that whatever impacts one will impact the other. Why is this important? Because now we can theoretically have communication that's faster than the speed of light. See, Einstein looked at the speed of light as like the universe's speed limit, but quantum entanglement throws a wrench in that, throws a spanner in it, because two things, they have already done this. They've taken two quantumly entangled particles and put one in Geneva and one in San Jose, and they spin one and the other one just spins. Now, that happens faster than the speed of light, but it happens. So now we're looking at the possibility of taking entangled particles and using them in communication devices where we could send probes far off into space and explore planets using the concept of quantum entanglement. This is what advancing the state of the art does. It makes things better. You know, material sciences, we have better concrete now than we did in the 1900s. We have better machinery than we did in the 1900s. We have better design capability. It used to be that we had to sketch things out and then put them into blueprints, and then we'd have to roll these blueprints out and manually deliver them to a work site. Now we can do this in AutoCAD and 3D modeling, and at the speed of light, ship that shit to a project halfway around the world. And any design changes can be done almost in real time. That's what advancing the state of the art does. But theology doesn't do that. In fact, what theology is a stumbling block to the advancement of humanity. Theology is what holds us back. Religion holds us back because many times, so for example, now there are experiments being done. There was a lady recently that lived, I don't know, I think it was like 120 days with a modified pig's heart while she was waiting for a transplant. Now, if you put that to religious people, the first thing they would say, "Oh, you're messing with God's design, His divine design, and you're wrong, and this is blasphemy, this is heresy," and that's what religion does. See, y'all need to catch this. You need to catch this because this is what's happening today. This is what's happening today. We have religious zealots that are trying to rule the world. And now that brings me back to why these churches exist, mega churches. I'm talking to you, mega church. They exist because their end game is not making humanity better. Their end game is amassing power. Because if you establish yourself as an institution of substantial membership, and if you establish yourself as an institution with sufficient money power, that leads to amassing public power. And when you amass public power, you can influence, inform, and impact public policy. And that's the end game. That's the end game. Now, I put the link in the comments. If you disagree, feel free to chime in. Feel free to chime in. Bring your hypothesis to the table. Now, here's the thing. So my wife is asking, she says, religion or the actual belief system? She wants me to quantify that. And I'm happy to do that. Because religion is the structure of aggregated beliefs. If you look at Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, he talks about the rule of 150. And the rule of 150 says that basically the average person can only maintain 150 personal relationships. So in order for like a church or a military unit or a corporation or a nonprofit to be able to communicate effectively, they have to create structure. They have to create hierarchies in order to make it work. Why? Because the average person can only maintain 150 personal relationships. Beyond that, you need structure. So the thing is that the reason why religion exists is because enough people got together and say, hey, we want to aggregate our beliefs. We want to get together and talk about the same thing. And don't get me wrong, churches are largely echo chambers, right? And if you know anything about me, you know anything about anything that I've said, I've taught, I'm not opposed to echo chambers. I'm not. Because sometimes I just don't, I like being around people that think like I do, or they have similar thought processes, because that allows me to further advance my thinking. And it's less exhausting than trying to argue or debate with someone who is contrary to what it is that you believe. Now, let me just say this one real quick thing, right? Because understand this, y'all, that for 30 years, I was a minister of the gospel. I was a minister of the gospel. I've been an associate pastor. I've been a senior pastor. I've been a bishop. I've been an apostle. I've walked in some very heavy theological circles. And I've studied. I've studied. I paid attention to this. And my thing was, it's always been, from the time I was a child, I always wanted to be the guy who lent something to humanity to make humanity better. I get out of bed literally every day thinking, what can I do to improve humanity? This is my thing. What can I do to make things better? And when you do that, you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I make things better? So what I saw is that over time, I didn't see where religion was making anyone better. I didn't see where theology was making anyone better or anything better. It wasn't making the world better. Wasn't making politics better. It just wasn't helping. So I thought to myself, I said, okay, there's got to be a better way. Got to be a better way. But I went through some gyrations and iterations. I went from being more like a Baptist preacher to being an apostolic Pentecostal preacher to being a word of faith preacher to being a grace preacher to being a preterist preacher and inclusionist / universalist preacher, before I kind of got to the point where I hit rock bottom and I said, I don't believe any of this shit. Okay. And so again, how did I get to this point? Because I believe that iron indeed sharpens iron. But watch this. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone in your echo chamber to sharpen you. Sometimes somebody will bring an idea to you that's so revolutionary that you have to consider it. You have to give it space. Albert Einstein, when he had his theory of special relativity and later general relativity, along comes Niels Bohr, a Danish physicist who talked about things like superposition, and he talked about quantum entanglement and all of these things. And Einstein, when Einstein heard this, it caused some cognitive dissonance. Now, this is Albert Einstein, the Einstein. It caused some cognitive dissonance in his head. He called what Niels Bohr and the Copenhagen physicists, he called it spooky action at a distance. And then he went further to say that because of Heisenberg's probability theory, he surmised that God does not play dice with the universe. But if there is a God, clearly he does play dice. Come on, baby. Clearly he does. And the reason why I say that is there's so much of what we see is just left to chance. Is why in a children's hospital today, there's going to be some child that is cured of cancer. And there will be another child that dies from it. Now, parents do the same thing, same treatment, all of that stuff, but one lives and one dies. And people say, well, that's according to God's plan. And I'm like, if that's the plan, then that's you that might as well not even be a plan. but here's the thing is that quantum physics, I think, from an understanding of spirituality and even mysticism, I think quantum physics gives a better understanding of it. Because if you think about quantum entanglement, this is why when your grandmother passes away or your spouse or a child passes away, that you still feel them inside of you, that you still feel the love, you still feel the connection. Why? Because your energies have been quantum entangled. And so now, even though that person's energy is no longer in the realm where you're able to perceive it, quantum entanglement says that the energy that is within you will impact that energy, and that energy, wherever it is and whatever it's doing, will influence, inform, and impact your energy. And I think that that's a beautiful thing, because this is the other thing that I want to get to, is that over time, science pretty much proves that we were wrong about a lot of natural phenomena. The Mayans used to cut people's hearts out to please their gods. Other cultures would have other types of blood rituals, blood sacrifices to appease the gods, so that rain would come to water the crops, so that earthquakes wouldn't come, floods wouldn't come, and all these different things. And then we learn later on that this wasn't the gods being angry. This is just natural phenomena. Earthquakes happen because of plate tectonics. Rain and other weather phenomena happen because of air patterns. And also some solar and lunar impacts. We know that now. That things like that when Jesus came down from the Mount of Transfiguration, and his disciples were trying to cure the boy who was throwing himself into the fire, and Jesus got pissed because he said, "How long have I had to deal with you, people of little faith?" And he proceeded to heal them. Now, watch this. Today, that when medical professionals assess that particular incident, they say that this boy likely had epilepsy. And epilepsy was causing him to throw himself into the fire. Now we have cures. We don't really have cures for epilepsy, but we have ways of mitigating epilepsy, one of which is the ketogenic diet, of which I've been on for the last 6 months, which has yielded this wonderful weight loss. In other words, the science of diet has gotten better. And if you look at things from a scientific standpoint, you can make things happen. But if I were to just say, well, I'm praying that God takes this weight away, no, God's not going to take the weight away if I keep stuffing Twinkies into my mouth. That's not going to happen. If I don't do something to change my diet, my eating habits, my exercise and sleep habits, and how I see myself, then the change is impossible. But I want to ask this question. I want to ask this, and feel free to jump on. I will add you to this broadcast. Name one fucking thing where theology has improved anything. Anything. Yeah, they are delicious, baby. I love Twinkies, but you know what though? Twinkies don't love my waistline, so I am going to I'm going to stick with what I'm doing. I'm waiting. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for someone. Oh, let see, I froze. Let me see. Let's see here. Okay, no, it looks like I'm moving. I choked, but I didn't. I didn't freeze. I didn't freeze. At least from where I'm sitting. Anyway, so listen. I dare you. I double dog dare you. Matter of fact, if you come on here and try to defend theology, I'll give you a copy of my book. Now, you may not read it because you might say, well, that stuff is only good as fire kindling because I take on some of the things. But listen, there is not a soul on earth that can make the case where theology has done anything to improve the cause of humanity. Not one fucking thing. I dare you. I double dog dare you. I triple dog dare you. And you get a free book as part of the deal. The reality is you can't. Nobody can. Not even the best theologian, because the best theologian is going to lean back on faith. That's their only argument. They can't. And so watch this. This is another thing too about every other intellectual discipline, is that there's this element of falsifiability. In other words, that when something is postulated or posited in the public domain, that there's someone that could come and submit something that says this doesn't make sense. And then there's a burden on the claimant to prove their thesis. Okay. Now, religion doesn't allow that. Religion doesn't allow falsifiability, because whenever something is introduced where falsifiability might be part of the discussion, it's immediately sent to the shutdown corner. And that's a fact. Y'all know it. You don't have to believe me. You know it. This is why when you have hard questions about God and you go to your pastor or your bishop or your apostle and you say, Pastor, Bishop, Apostle, why God do that? And they'll say, well, son, daughter, you just need to fortify your faith. I know, I've seen it. I've been there. I've been in that chair. I've been asking. I used to ask the questions, and then when I didn't get the answers that I needed from the people that were in leadership, I began to seek them out for myself, and I began to seek others that were on a similar journey, on a similar path. So I'm just, Mark Daniel David, fuck theology. He said it, not me. uh, you know, and again, I'm not trying to shit on anybody's religion here. You can believe what you believe, but when you start putting together a system that tries to justify what you believe and its superiority to what others believe, that's a problem. That's a problem. If you believe in God, great. Good on you, mate. If you believe in Jesus, more power to you. You believe in Krishna, believe in Buddha. All right. But here's the thing, that what theology is, and this is going to be like sort of my closing statement here. Theology is the organized intellectual study of the make-believe. Let me say that again. Theology is the organized intellectual study of make-believe. Because you can't prove any of this. There's no scientific method that will allow you to prove any hypothesis, any theological hypothesis. And because of that, there's no theological theory. And this is important to remember, because I'm going to give y'all a quick education, is that most of what we call theory is really hypothesis. You have a theory that evolution is not real. That's not a theory, that's a hypothesis. It's an educated guess. And depending on how educated you are, it may not be educated at all. A theory is a hypothesis that has been tested, documented, and shared among peers to see if it will withstand the same rigor and produce the same result as the original hypothesis. Now, once that happens and there is a consensus among the scientific community, then it becomes accepted as a theory. And at the end of the day, everything that we know is mere theory. Even the most robust things, the sun rising in the east. Why does it do that? We have a theory for that. Can that theory be displaced? It absolutely can. There's already hypotheses and even some theories, even some nascent theories that suggest that gravity may be weaker than we've ever thought. There are similar hypotheses and nascent theories that posit the existence of something called a graviton, and that this graviton would then be harmonized with the standard model of particle physics, and then we inch closer to the uniform theory of everything, which is that's the holy grail of science, is the unified theory. We start with unified field theory, unified particle theory, but the unified theory of all things. And there are some good candidates for that. Things that they call M theory and string theory. These are things that we haven't fully examined the M effect, or we haven't actually observed strings, but they hold up under mathematical modeling. Yeah, my wife, I love her. And y'all have to understand this. I'm married to a lawyer, which means I don't win arguments. But the thing is, human intelligence is not the pinnacle of all understanding. The thing is that everything that we do, we test it and see if we can learn something from it. It's like right now, consciousness is something that has not been scientifically quantified or completely, but we're getting close to that. We're seeing where we can measure consciousness. Now, once we measure it and we're able to quantify it, then we might understand how it flows. And then we'll understand how it can be used, how it can be changed, or how it can be used to advance humanity. So no, baby, human intelligence is not the be all to end all, but I don't think that it's some magical sky wizard that knows it all either. What I do think is that energy. I believe that energy is conscious, and consciousness is energy. And I think that this energy has always existed and it always will. That's modeled under the law of conservation, which says the energy is neither created nor destroyed. So whatever you were doing before you were born is likely what you'll be doing after you die. Law of conservation. Energy is not created or destroyed. You're just a continuum along those lines. Matter of fact, let me just say this. I said I was going to close, but now I got to do a Baptist close. I got to close one more time because I want to talk about this whole thing about eternal conscious torment. And I really need to get at this because theology actually goes backward. I was content while I was speaking, saying that it's just a stumbling block and an impediment to progress. No, it's actually something that's trying to sack the quarterback of progress. And why do I say that? Because throughout the all the way up until maybe the 3rd or 4th century, there was no doctrine of hell, no doctrine of eternal conscious torment. That came about from Dante's Divine Comedy, Dante's Inferno, and for which Dante was excommunicated for initially. But then the Catholic Church saw some value in it and decided to implement it, because this is what we could do to keep all you little urchins in line, so that you keep doing God's work, so that you don't think about things like sex and alcohol and things, fun shit. You don't think about that. You think about God, because if I don't please God, I'm going to go to hell. Now, they not only have something to hold over you in this life, but something to hold over you in the next. I just, I'm just blown away by how, and even when, people like the grace movement and inclusionism and universalism, Dr. Carlton Pearson, who I love very much, uh, said that a loving God couldn't put people in hell. A loving God couldn't even create hell. I mean, think about it. If you're omniscient, you're God, you know the end from the beginning, but your love, how could you create a place of torment? And then why would you torment someone forever for what they do in their 70 and 10, 80 if they're strong? Make that make sense. And it doesn't. It doesn't line up. It doesn't work. And I'm still waiting. My link is in the comments. If you click on that link, it'll put you in the green room, and I'll hit the trigger and bring you on here. So if you could tell me where theology has done anything to improve the human condition or humanity in any meaningful way, you'll get a free book. You'll get a free book. And you can take it and make TikTok videos of yourself burning my book. Look, I'm pleasing God by burning the book of this heretic. Dog, I will have paid the money for the book, so I'm paying myself, so you're not really hurting me. But you can't. There ain't nobody out there. There is not a soul out there that can intellectually articulate how theology has helped anyone, because it doesn't. Medicine has helped thousands of people. It's like, shit, we came up with penicillin. Penicillin helped people fight off infections that killed people. There was a vaccine for polio that stopped people from losing the use of their limbs. And now we're coming up with things that are, neural implants and exoskeletons, where the people who have been lame for throughout their lives will be able to walk. Bionic eyes that will allow the blind to see, and we already have cochlear implants that allow the hearing impaired to hear. Because that's what science does. Listen, science is not the truth. Let me make that emphatically clear. Science is not the fucking truth. What it is a tool to help us work toward the truth. Because every time science posits something, sooner or later, someone puts forth something to displace that original hypothesis or theory. And this is how science keeps it moving, where theology doesn't. This glass, is it half full or half empty? It's 100% full. And I'm going to tell you why. Because half of that glass is filled with bullet bourbon. Shameless plug. And the other half of it is filled with air. Now, air is a medium like water or bourbon. And there are some in the scientific community that ascribe the quality of liquid to air. So what happens is, because bourbon happens to be a superior medium to air, it displaces the air. And that's how science works, y'all. a superior hypothesis or superior theory comes in and displaces the old. It was once supposed that the reason why we see disparities in the speed of light in the cosmos is because they believe that there was something called ether that existed in the cosmos that separated heavenly bodies. But we know now that that ether doesn't exist. That ether was actually a pretty robust theory until like the 1890s. And I believe that it was John Clerk Maxwell that actually created the theory that displaced the theory of ether. So the thing is that your theory is only good until the next theory surpasses it. It was like once upon a time, we believed that atoms were consisting of protons and neutrons in the nucleus and electrons orbiting around like a little solar system. But what we see now that they don't really exist in orbits like that. They exist in energy fields, and these energy fields are nested, and they carry charge between them. And this is how we are able to produce chemical bonds. It's through the exchange of electrons that we are able to produce things like carbon dioxide or water, H2O, or peroxide, H2O2. Okay. So all of these things, at the end of the day, I've been talking for an hour and 1 minute now, and I've been waiting for anyone, and I'm sure that some of y'all out there are watching, man, I should send a text to so-and-so so they could jump on this call and prove this fool wrong. This hellbound fool. There ain't no hell. So there ain't no hell, and there ain't no biblical God either. So I don't worry about any of that. Now, do I believe in something bigger than humanity? Maybe. Yeah. I hold out that possibility. I won't say that I believe in it, because I don't really believe in anything. I put my trust in, I put confidence in that which is tangible, measurable, and repeatable. So I don't really believe in anything. I place my trust and confidence in things that I know that it can be modeled, So anyway, well, let me do this. I'm gonna go through these comments, because some of these comments were really, really good, and there's a lot of them. I'm like, holy fuck. So Durante Lamar, let me say something about this brother, Durante Lamar. This is one seriously badass dude. I mean, and his platform is growing. I think he just went over 40,000 subscribers on YouTube. He's written books. He's an ex-pastor with theological degrees. And he came to the conclusion that everything that he was taught, everything that he had preached, was complete total bullshit. And now he's telling the truth. I mean, we need more people like this. And I got to say this too. Quick shout out to a couple of the people who wrote forwards for these books, because in this book, in Deconstructing Religion, the forward is written by none other than David Fitzgerald, written by Nailed, 10 Reasons Why Jesus Never Existed. New York Times bestseller. He wrote the forward to my book. And I have an afterword by Antonio T. Smith Jr., who is a former Christian bishop and pastor. And he and I were once laboring together in the same ecumenical organization as bishops. And he wrote the afterword to this. Really brilliant guy. I mean, that's the other thing too. So Durante, I'm looking forward to doing a show with Durante, because I know it's gonna be off the chain, because we both I think he's deeply intellectual and very articulate, very and very succinct. I mean, I could just listen to his shows all day, but I'm looking forward to doing some work with him. And then the Martial Leader, the forward to this book was written by my martial arts sifu, Brad Garrison, who trained under Harley Elmore, the Warriors Way system, who trained under Dan Inosanto, who trained under Bruce Lee. So that's my lineage in martial arts. And in meta speech, the foreword is written none other than one of my best friends, another former pastor, Daryl L. Rivers, who is a brilliant speaker, teacher, coach, retired police officer, former Navy Spec Ops. This is, and these are the people that I surround myself with. And because I surround myself with these kind of people, they help me to grow. And this is the thing. So anyway, let's go through some of these comments here. So Durante said, that's one hell of a question. I hope that they're all good questions. Durante had invited some people. Thank you for doing that, my brother. I owe you a solid for that. He says, Derek is a new friend who has some amazing content. Thank you so much. Yeah, my wife, she says, so that would not make it an infallible word. There's no such thing as infallible, because at some point, everything has to be falsifiable. There's nothing that's immutable, steadfast, and unchanging. Everything is subject to change at some level. Let's see. Maria Arcat says, yep, religion is a problem. Maria says, oh, the inconsistency. You got to say it like the guy who was narrating the explosion of the Hindenburg. Oh, the humanity. John Knight says, canonization is bullshit. John had introduced me something. He was a member of my church that I pastored in Arizona. And John introduced me to a collection of books, forbidden books from the Bible. And that was an eye-opener. And John, I'm forever grateful for that. Mark Daniel David says, from a biblical study stance that incorporates hermeneutics and cross-referencing, I understand how the Old Testament relates to the New Testament based upon doctrine and dogma. That's the key point right there, my friend, based upon doctrine and dogma. But if you say by covenant, there's no relationship between the old and the new. And so even before I had left Christianity and left Christian preaching, I was all about shit canning the Old Testament. Never preached from it again after that. Religion fears thinking and questioning. That's right, Maria. That's absolutely right. Maria says it's all a mind game. And Mark says the military does the same thing. Yes, it does. Well, yes, it does. I was going to say, but, and I was just trying to throw a ball because I'm ex-military. I'm ex-Navy. And it says theology without rituals that are necessary for humans to do. Theology without rituals that are necessary for humans to develop and thrive. I don't think so. I don't think you need theology to have spirituality. I think spirituality and theology are two totally separate things. And I think that if you were to absolutely deconstruct and dismantle theology, spirituality would be more, shall I say, fluid and useful. Because I think that there is something to be gained from spirituality, but that is a personal journey, not a corporate one. Because spirituality is a personal thing. Belief is a personal thing. So Mark says, it seems as though religions are rooted in tools that are necessary for humans to thrive. Nope, I think that those tools would have come about without religion, and they would have been better. Theology and religion thwart progress. Yes, that's absolutely right. Maria says, religion gets scared when we can make things and do things to help us advance and be better. It absolutely does. You know, for example, through medical science, we get the science of birth control. You know, birth control has actually been a boon to humanity. The fighting against birth control has been a bane to humanity. Y'all don't hear what I'm saying. Live longer and have more meaningful lives, Maria says. The control and power is what it tries to hang on to, and with a vengeance. And then Mark says, if religion is the structure of aggregated beliefs, then I think that structure is necessary. No, it's not. It's not. That structure is not necessary. That's the whole point, is that when you begin to aggregate beliefs, you create a system of beliefs. and then you have to create some education, or you have to perpetuate it. And that's why I said, no, that structure is unnecessary. Matter of fact, if that structure died, if it died a sudden death, which, God, wishful thinking, if it died a sudden death, we'd figure it out. Humanity would suddenly get better because it's totally unleashed. And so Maria says, like Durante said, it's fan fiction in every religion trying to copy each other. And that's the other thing too. It's Christianity is a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And you could go back, thousands of years before Christ and find where these myths had already been perpetuated. They already been propagated. Religion is actually the father of propaganda. It says the structure is what seems to be evidence-based, and religions use that to manipulate people and draw them in. That's the whole thing, man. Religion is not evidence-based, because if it were evidence is repeatable, or at least acceptable evidence is repeatable. You can't you cannot faithfully reproduce religious experiences. You can't. It's impossible. It's like some people speak in tongues, and some people have healing, and some people, they experience gold dust falling. If this were something that were measurable, then okay. And we could say, all right, we may not know exactly where it comes from, but we know that this happens on a regular basis, that this happens all over the place. So Mark says, yeah, iron sharpens iron, and there are biblical concepts that exist outside of theology. You know what? A broken clock is right twice a day, Mark. A broken clock is right twice a day, but that does not make that clock qualified to either keep time or teach time. A broken clock is right twice a day, but it's broken at the end of the day. And theology is broken. Christianity is broken. It has nothing to contribute to the betterment of humanity. He says, "Oh yeah, God is a gambler." I mean, God says, spin that wheel, bitch. And when I say that, I'm not talking about women, because there's some guys. Y'all know what I'm saying. Yeah, the God of the gaps argument. Yeah, and the God of the gaps argument is one of the most fallacious arguments that theologians has ever posited. That wherever you don't have an explanation, God fills the gap. That's bullshit on steroids. Troy Stover says, theology has made me become an atheist. Thanks, that boy. He said that was one great thing about theology. Yeah, I think theology produces more atheists than anything else. That's my thought. That's my thought. And my baby, she said, every day I swear I'm fighting for your soul. Stop it with the voices. Oh, baby, I'm having fun. I'm having fun. This is fun. And this is why they don't want us to know science, history, or literature. That's right, Maria. Maria and Mark, I want y'all to inbox me your addresses. All these comments that y'all sent, I'm going to send y'all a free book. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send y'all a free book because y'all have contributed mightily to this discussion. Let's see what else. Durante, thank you for being here. Yeah, but Mark and Maria, y'all inbox me your addresses and I will send you a book. And my baby with the last word, she says, or humanity would plunge into the abyss of moral and substantive anarchy. I don't believe that, because there are atheists that I know that are more moral than any Christian. There are Buddhists that are more moral than any Christian. There are Hindus that are more moral than any Buddhist. I mean, morality is universal. Things like don't kill, don't lie, things like that. You don't need religion for that. You don't need theology for that. And so Mark says, sure, theology is broken and there are still psychological concepts of the Bible that I agree with that exists outside of theology, the Bible, and religion. You know what? Here's the thing. Again, there are things like the power of agreement and the law of attraction. Those are things that are modeled in the Bible, but you can have that without the Bible. You don't need the Bible for those things. There are plenty of atheists out there that exercise the law of attraction, and they do it way better than a lot of Christians. You know, because like for the Christians, the only ones that are getting paid are the ones they got the mega ministries and the TV shows and the books and stuff, the conferences. They're the only ones that are really profiting. Everybody else is just kind of holding on. It's very hard to do when love is gone. And that's no lie. So that's about it. That's about it. I've gone on long enough. I hope that this has been edifying to you. I hope that, you know, even if you don't agree with me, and that's cool. I'm not out here trying to make a bunch of intellectual or spiritual derricks. Not my bag. Don't give a fuck about that. But what I do care, I care that you're thinking, that you're putting your thinker on, that you're putting your thinker in gear. It's one thing to have a car, you know, and this is a thing nowadays. Like people collect cars, they'll buy these cars and they'll never drive them, and I think it's sad. But there are a couple of people, and I'll cite two of them. Tommy Hilfiger is one, and Will I Am from the Black Eyed Peas is the other. And was it Will I Am for the is it the Black Eyed Peas? Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, y'all know who Will I Am is. But he has both of these guys have collections of cars, and they take their cars out regularly and put them on the track and drive them on the street. You know, so that's the thing. So my baby, she says these are the debates that we have, y'all. He married a Kojic raised woman who embraces thought and spirituality. Baby, what I'm not going to do today, I'm not going to say what I call it because she knows, man, she knows. But you know, the thing is that she's really way more advanced than the average M1 A1 Christian. She's well beyond that. She's graduated beyond that. You know, I understand you love your Kojic traditions and everything, baby, and I honor that. I don't take that away from you. But yeah, I not my bag. So Durante said his wife's granddad is Kojic. Oh, look at that. That's one more thing we have in common, Durante. This is, I tell you, I'm almost of the mindset that we don't even need to do a live stream. Somehow or another, we need to get plane tickets and get close to where each other are so we can be in person. I think that the chemistry from that would just be amazing. So Mark Daniel David, he says, yes, I celebrate your sovereignty, Dr. Day. Not a doctor. I just play one on religious broadcasts. Oh, and then Durante said, I appreciate your what was it? He said, what did he say? I appreciate your authenticity, bro. I appreciate your authenticity. It's rare that someone can come out and so eloquently debunk most of this stuff out here. And I think that that if more people saw it, it would force them to think. And I think that part of the reason why the religion of the demise of religion doesn't happen faster is because there are not enough voices out there telling people to think. And because if you think independently and you really collect all the the historical facts, critical thinking will get the best of you if you have any. So if you don't have any, get some. So that's what I have. No, it seems like no theologian is coming in to debunk my hypothesis, to say what has and listen, y'all who are watching and listening, please, please challenge people. Ask them, where does theology improve humanity? And if it does, if they give you an answer, tell them to hit your boy up, because I would love to hear it. We can get on a live stream and talk it out. Now, I'm like Durante, I'm like you, brother. Listen, I don't debate people. I don't. And the only reason why I'm doing a call out in this particular case is because you can't produce the evidence. There's no habeas corpus here. You can't produce even a weak hypothesis supporting how theology, yet theology is propagated every day in seminaries all over the world, churches all over the world. But listen, last thing, time kills all gods. And if you look at the history of gods, you will see that time is undefeated. That's what I have for y'all now. Thank y'all for coming to my TED Talk. Thank you for growing in real time with me. Next week, Aaron will be back, and we are going to do a send-off of Phreology. We're going to do a Phreology funeral. We're going to send Phreology off New Orleans style, with the blues and the pallbearers and the mourners and all of that shit, as we get ready to usher in the age of the Gnostic agnostic. So until next time, peace and hair grease. Love y'all.